Hey, amazing people. What we're going to do here is we're going to look at where we've got multiple numbers and letters written in expanded form. We're going to combine these together to write them into index form. Now, as we do that here, uh, a good way to think about it is to first of all focus on just the numbers that you have. Then focus on one letter and deal with that letter. And then if there's another letter, then focus on that letter and deal with it. So break it down into parts here. Now, in this first instance, we've got 7 times d times d times d times 7 times e times e times e times e times d times e. Now, again, breaking this into parts. So the first thing I want to deal with is I want to deal with the numbers here. So the only number that I have is number 7, and there's two of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down a number 7, and that's going to be one of our bases here. And because there's two of them, I'm going to give that a power of 2. Now, I've dealt with the numbers here, and I don't need to worry about the numbers anymore. So now the next part I'm going to do is I'm going to then deal with the letters. Now, the first letter I come across is the letter D, so I'm going to start with that letter D here, okay, and I'm going to deal with it now. Now, in this case here, I need to count up all of them that I have, and they may not all be together. So in this instance, I've got 1, 2, 3, and then I've got another one all the way down here. So I've actually got 4 of them here. So what I want to do is I want to include that 4 as the power for the letter D. Next up, I want to deal with the letter E. Now, in this instance, again, I want to count how many of these I have here. So I can see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So my power here is going to be 5, which I apply. So that's going to be to the power of 5. That's the first example done. Next up, we don't have it as separated as we did in that first example. So we've got 4k times 3l times 4k times 3l. Now we're going to deal with this in a similar way. We're going to deal with numbers first. Then we're going to deal with letters. Now, the first number I want to deal with the lowest one, just to keep them in a kind of counting order. So looking at this here, I've got the number 3 to begin with. That's the lowest number I have. So I'm going to write that down first, and I need to count up the number of those 3s that I have. And I can see that I've got 1, 2 of those number 3s. So I'm just going to deal with them to start off with, and that's going to be to a power of 2. Then what I want to do is I want to times this by the next part, which is going to be the next number I have, which is the number 4. And again, I can see that I've got 2 of these number 4s here. So I just want to deal with them, and that's going to be to the power of 2. Then the next aspect of this is I have these other letters to deal with here. So I've got letter K and the letter L. Now I'm going to multiply by the letter K to start off with, and I can see that there are, again, 2 of these. So I've got 1 here and 1 here. I'm going to deal with each of these, and that's going to be to the power of 2. And lastly, I've got the letter L here to deal with. And again, if I look at this to look at the number of L's I've got 2 of them, which are here and here. So in that case here, that's going to be to the power of 2. Now that I've written it in this form, you notice I still got some multiplication signs here. So this isn't the most ideal way to represent this information. So what I want to do is I want to rewrite this, and I want to be able to condense it up. Now, the first aspect of this is I'm going to have the 3 to the power of 2. Now, in this regard, often you generally leave the multiplication sign here, but sometimes it can be left out. And so this would then be written, if we're leaving it out, as 4 to the power of 2, and it's indicated that there's a multiplication between these two here. A good thing to do in this instance might be to put some brackets around to the 4 to the power of 2, and that just makes it clear that you do have that multiplication. The next aspect we have is we've got the letter K, and that's to the power of 2. Then we've also got the letter L to the power of 2. And so we're representing all of this information here nice and clearly. And it's just implied that each of these is going to multiply together. Last up, we've got this example where we've got 3xy, not in brackets, and then we've got 3xy in brackets. 3xy in brackets and 3xy in brackets. So in this instance here, what we want to do is we want to have 3xy, as that's going to be everything that we've got here. And we need to identify the powers of each of these. Now, to start off with, what I want to do is just focus on the number 3. So dealing with that here, I can see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 of these 3s. So I want to apply each of them together. So that's going to be to the power of 4. Then with the x's, in a similar way, since they all have an x, that's also going to be to the power of 4. And likewise with the y, that's also going to be to the power of 4. This is one way of looking at this one. Now, the other way of looking at this one is I can think of it as 3xy, and that's the part, because it's common in each part of this here. Okay, I can think about that first one also being in brackets in this aspect. So a way of applying this is if I put this 3xy in brackets, what I could do instead is I could apply a power to that, and that would be to the power of 4. And that could be a way of writing that in an index form.